Have you ever wondered what Amsterdam is all about? Don't just read about the culture that has accepted cannabis. Experience it firsthand with CS Travel's Sensible Amsterdam Tour with NORML. Travel to one of Europe's most beautiful cities this January for an educational and recreational visit to a city that regulates cannabis like alcohol. CS Travel has arranged an exclusive visit for reform-minded Americans that includes a private tour of some of Amsterdam's most renowned coffee shops, educational seminars with coffee shop proprietors, local law enforcement, members of the Cannabis Retailers Association, and NORML staff. Entertainment includes a special evening at the Boom Chicago Comedy Club, canal tours, visits to the city's many museums, including the world-famous Van Gogh Museum. Don't just wonder about Amsterdam, experience the beauty and freedom of this unique city firsthand with CS Travel and NORML's Sensible Amsterdam Tour. Pricing information is available online at coffeeshoptravel.com. That's coffeeshoptravel.com. Or call toll-free at 800-816-1846. That's 800-816-1846. Be a sensible American. Visit Amsterdam with CS Travel and NORML this January. Call 1-800-816-1846 right now to book your trip. More information is available at NORML.org. And distributed by the National Organization for the Reform of Marijuana Laws in Washington, D.C. This is your daily audio stash, the growing truth about cannabis. Welcome to the most popular audio podcast regarding marijuana in all of America and all the world, featuring interviews with scientists, politicians, doctors, prohibition policy activists, regular cannabis consumers, musicians, and NORML staff and NORML's board of directors, along with music and comedy no other podcast can offer. You can always find out more about the show at our website, NORMLAudiostash.com. We're ending marijuana prohibition with education, one listener at a time. Welcome back here to the Audio Stash today, folks. I'm your host, Chris Goldstein, and first off, let me thank all of you who have already participated in our Re-Legalize online fundraiser this week. We had a lot of emails and a few $1,000s come in our first day yesterday, and you can help NORML all week long during the Re-Legalize fundraiser. Just visit norml.org/relegalize or click through the links at norml.org on the homepage or normlaudiostash.com. Make your donation right now to NORML. Help us end marijuana prohibition in America. Make your donation right now. All the folks who have already made that donation, well, they're sitting at home or at work right now, surrounded by a visible green glow of warm and fuzzy feelings. This is the sensation and glow you can achieve right now by making at least a $5 donation to NORML right now at norml.org/relegalize. Again, links at normlaudiostash.com. We also have a new tool today for everyone to use in the Re-Legalize campaign. The hard-working techno geniuses at Red Aphid Interactive Media have created an easy-to-use flash animation. You can use this to post on blogs and websites and message boards. Links to it are up at normlaudiostash.com. You can view it up there as well, and also at norml.org/relegalize. Check it out. Embed emails, send it to everyone you know, and let's keep the momentum going for our Re-Legalize fundraiser this week. Tuesday here, folks, is where we present our Government at Work segments on the Audio Stash. And this has been a day where we have brought some really high-profile guests here to the program. During the Hinchy-Rohrabacher amendment debate this year, we had both Congressman Maurice Hinchey of New York and Congressman Dana Rohrabacher of California on the program to discuss the amendment. We had Congressman Ron Paul here on the program to discuss the Industrial Hemp Farming Act, which has recently become an issue again. NORML's Daily Audio Stash was the only venue during Hinchy-Rohrabacher this year to feature both sponsors talking about the bill. Also, during Government at Work, we've spoken with Aaron Houston and Ray Warren from the Marijuana Policy Project, Jenny Kern and others from the Drug Policy Alliance, lawyers like Allison Chin Holcomb, Alan Hopper of the ACLU. Tuesdays have really been a big day. We featured all of the organizers of ballot initiatives and legislation, like Mason Tvert in Denver, Tim Beck in Michigan, all of the women running the municipal measures in California last year. We've had state elected officials here on the program, right here on the Audio Stash, like William Mesher of South Carolina, Charles Weed of New Hampshire, City Councilor Doss Williams of Santa Barbara. Folks, we have presented hundreds and hundreds of guests to discuss in depth the marijuana news and information in America and the world every single day. This program, NORML's Daily Audio Stash, this is the only daily audio program focused on marijuana in the world, and it's free. Every day you can download or listen to the podcast for free. And just like public radio or public TV, NORML is a nonprofit, a service to all American cannabis consumers and all of those seeking marijuana reform. So we need you to get involved. If you listen to the podcast every day, you know what a valuable resource this show is. So take a moment right now. You don't even need to put down your smoking implement of choice. Just go one-handed to the computer, grab the mouse, type in norml.org/relegalize, make your donation so that we can continue to bring the Audio Stash every single day and make improvements to the podcasts in 2008. Just head on up to norml.org/relegalize. Of course, we have links at normlaudiostash.com. Today here on the show, we have NORML's senior policy analyst, Paul Armentano. Paul joins us here today to discuss the Drug Policy Alliance conference he attended last week in New Orleans. Give us more detail on the zero-tolerance DUID laws out there. Also in the show today, we're going to play a mixed selection of music recorded live in Austin, Texas at the Austin Freedom Fest this August. That was headlined by Willie Nelson, of course. So a big stash today with your free stash, NORML's Daily Audio Stash. Hope you'll take a moment right now. Make your relegalized donation at norml.org/relegalize. And, of course, we have links right up on our website at normlaudiostash.com. Let's get right into our show today with our interview with Paul Armentano. Paul Armentano is NORML's senior policy analyst, and he helps us out with the Audio Stash almost every single day. He's a frequent guest here on the program. Paul, welcome back to the show today.
Good to be here, Chris.
Great to speak with you today, Paul. You were just down there in the Big Easy, New Orleans, for the Drug Policy Alliance conference. Tell me about your impressions of the event.
You know, this was a terrific conference, and DPA deserves all the credit in the world for bringing so many top speakers and organizations together in one place for what turned out to be just a phenomenal event. There were more than 1,400 attendees, so this was one of the largest drug policy reform conferences ever held. There were terrific speakers. There was a great energy about the conference. It was a terrific event, and I would encourage people to definitely go out of their way to attend the next conference, which will be 2 years from now, looking at this issue again. It's really something people do not want to miss.
And, you know, Paul, what was it like just being there in New Orleans?
You know, there was a certain energy about New Orleans, but, you know, there was also a certain sadness about the state of affairs in many parts of that city, many parts of the city that many tourists do not see, have not recovered from the devastating effects of several years ago. And clearly many of the attendees, were quite moved by that. And in many people's minds, it just sort of reemphasized why this ongoing drug war is such a waste of priorities and such a waste of resources when you see right in front of you these other areas that need the sort of attention, and those areas are not being paid the attention they deserve because we're spending millions upon millions of dollars targeting and prosecuting nonviolent drug offenders. I think that was a message many people were left with.
Now, Paul, what were some of the standout presentations and speakers for you?
There were a number of terrific presentations. There was an excellent presentation by academic at University of Santa Cruz, Craig Reinerman, who has a forthcoming report that will be published looking at the demographics of California medical marijuana users. And there was some really interesting and unique information that he had in that presentation. There was a terrific presentation by NORML board member Dominic Holden that is looking at the effect that lowest prioritization initiatives in Seattle have had on marijuana enforcement and attitudes toward the use of marijuana among the population there. And there was a real intriguing keynote speech at the conference by, of all people, Mr. Antonio Costa, who is actually the head of the UN Office on Drugs and Crime. And as any of the listeners out there who are familiar with Mr. Costa would know, he is in no way one who favors drug law reform. So he was sort of kind of the lamb entering the pit of the lions by agreeing to speak at this conference. So clearly attendees got to hear another perspective, his perspective that in fact the drug war is working, and he was challenged on that perspective quite a bit, and rightly so, by the attendees at the conference.
So this gentleman was the lamb entering the den. How did the lions treat him?
Probably a lot more respectfully than they ought to have, if you ask me. As one who has attended opposition conferences and been on the other side of this coin, I can tell you that the attendees at the DPA conference treated Mr. Costa with a lot more respect than I've been treated with in the past attending some of these prohibitionist functions. But in fact, when Mr. Costa one-on-one was challenged by several academics who are quite familiar with the failures of prohibition, not just in America but abroad, his demeanor changed quite a bit, and I think many people who witnessed those one-on-one interactions got to see a much different view of Mr. Costa than the sort of soft and warm and lovey-dovey view he tried to portray when he gave his keynote address.
So this was essentially the drug czar for the United Nations here.
This is the drug czar for the world, essentially. And he's every bit as rabid as the U.S. drug czar is. Only he's looking on a world scale, not just looking at the United States.
It seems the U.S. really heavily influences United Nations drug policy, just from looking at those policies on the surface.
Certainly that seems to be the case. Not being a fly on the wall at the UN, I can't say that for certain, but it certainly does seem that the U.S. has quite a bit of clout when it comes to influencing the way several other countries also enact and maintain their drug policies, and certainly this UN office has taken the sort of U.S. hard line for, the bulk of its existence, and I don't necessarily think that's a coincidence, but, don't underestimate the fact that many leaders in many other countries simply share the United States view, regardless of U.S. pressure. Unfortunately, too many of the world's leaders share this do drugs, do time, tough on crime policy, as we're seeing, for instance, right now, just north of the border, the new Harper government in Canada is trying to enact mandatory minimums for the first time for drug sentencing in that country. I don't think that's due to U.S. pressure. I think the new conservative government there really believes it will work.
Well, Paul, other than the World Drug Czar there from the UN, who else was really a standout speaker last week?
You know, one speaker that was terrific to see was Dr. Carl Hart from Columbia University. He was the co-investigator on a study published this summer that you and I talked about quite extensively that compared the efficacy of inhaled marijuana to Marinol and found that inhaled marijuana seemed to produce a similar therapeutic effect in patients that was similar to those that took 8 times the recommended dose of Marinol. So in fact, in short, marijuana was found to be quite effective. He gave a terrific speech talking about his clinical research that he's done with drugs, and also talked about the broader implications of drug policy. You know, he warned a lot of the attendees not to simply fight this battle for what may or may not be their drug of choice, but to remember that many of the principles behind drug law reform apply to all drugs across the board and not just one particular drug or one particular constituency who may or may not use that drug. And it was a very powerful speech. I give him a lot of credit for really sticking his neck out on the line as an untenured professor and as one of the few investigators in this country who has the privilege of performing clinical trials not just on marijuana but on other controlled substances as well. I think he was taking a major risk by coming out publicly at a conference like this and making the statements he made.
Paul, is it surprising that academics and researchers out there have to weigh the politics of their research?
It's really unfortunate, but that does seem to be the reality. And when you're talking about such a politicized issue as this, unfortunately, that seems to be the case, that, you know, academics who simply do look at this issue objectively, but then based on the evidence come to this conclusion that the policy we're enacting is not the best policy from a cost-benefit analysis. It's unfortunate that when they reach that sort of evidence-based conclusion, they run the risk of being attacked by the very government and institutions that they rely on to do their work.
And Paul, also today we're going to focus in on a story from NORML News last week. This report came out of Sweden regarding their zero-tolerance DUID law. You were testifying before a California Assembly committee that was exploring the same concept. But in Sweden, they enact zero tolerance, and lo and behold, there's a 10-fold increase in drivers being tested in great detail because of police suspicions.
Yes, in fact, Sweden, several years ago, about 7 years ago now, enacted a law that said drivers who operate a vehicle with any trace amount of illicit substances in their blood are guilty per se of DUI. And what these researchers found was that they did not find that, in fact, incidences of drug driving went down, but what they did find was that the number of drivers who were requested to submit blood tests and then had their blood examined by a lab, they found that number went up tenfold. So we have great expense now to the state and a great infringement on one would argue the civil liberties of these drivers. Yet we don't see any reduction in drug driving. The crisis that this policy was meant to resolve.
And in this Swedish case, they turned up all kinds of drugs, Paul. I mean, when you start testing people ad hoc for the minute presence of anything, well, they did turn up all kinds of substances.
Well, it was somewhat shocking to me, but 60% of all these drivers that were tested, and we're talking about several thousand drivers over the years, 60% showed up positive for amphetamines. And as many people are aware, amphetamines do not stay in the blood very long. So this was not an instance of blood tests picking up past use of amphetamines that went back weeks or months. This was picking up recent use of amphetamines, quite popular among the drivers that were suspected of driving DUI. Marijuana, notably, when used without being used in combination with other drugs or alcohol, barely showed up at all. In fact, only 4% of all these drivers that were tested positive for THC alone in their blood. A larger percentage did test positive for marijuana in combination with alcohol and other drugs. But, as I mentioned, very few tested positive for marijuana alone. Not surprisingly, quite a large contingent of drivers tested positive for the presence of benzodiazepines. And as somebody who works on this DUI issue and attends numerous conferences with other experts who work on this issue, I've got to tell you, folks are very concerned about the prevalence of benzodiazepines showing up in drivers who appear to be under the influence and or are in serious car accidents. Clearly, the use of these prescription drugs does seem to play a growing role in accident risk, and the Swedish study bore that out as expected.
Now, this study we're discussing in Normal News, this study didn't cover the efficacy of zero tolerance in DUID.
No, but in fact, this researcher had previously published a study looking at the efficacy of this law in Sweden about 1 year earlier. And as I noted, the researcher did not find that the incidences of drug driving had gone down even despite the enactment and rigorous enforcement of this law. The speculation on his part was that this unfortunate result, in their minds, was a fact of had much to do with the fact that the drug driving population, for the most part, are recidivists. They're repeat offenders. Many of these people are unlicensed drivers to begin with. Oftentimes, they're the fairly hardcore drug population, and their behavior is simply not going to be deterred by the enactment or the enforcement of laws like these because they have a strong propensity to break the law in the first place.
Paul, you've covered this issue of DUID and drug testing for many years. You're called as an expert to testify on the issue, and you mentioned you work closely with others on these topics. So let me ask, what's the best solution for DUID? I mean, we've already seen breathalyzers installed in cars to prevent drunk driving, but are we going to see in the future some sort of blood testing device locking out cars too?
I certainly hope not, but, such a day may come. Maybe I'm a bit idealistic, but I'm hopeful that this is a problem that a public education can really make a difference about. Many people point at drunk driving, and, certainly many experts will claim that there are still too many drunk driving-related accidents. And, it's hard to disagree with that statement, but it's also true that incidences of drunk driving have dropped dramatically in the past few decades. And some of that had to do with tougher legislation. Some of it had to do with lowering what's an acceptable blood alcohol level in this country. But most of it had to do with an actual change in the culture and a change in attitudes. There's much more awareness about drunk driving. There's much more peer pressure against the idea of drunk driving. And certainly I think, the same culture surrounding drug driving, which arguably is a much smaller problem than drunk driving. But I think an education campaign can really make people aware of the risks of drug driving, where they exist, and that a targeted campaign can encourage folks to minimize those risks. One thing that we've noticed in the available research is that while marijuana in and of itself is not a particularly significant risk for roadside accidents, the use of marijuana when used in combination with alcohol is a troubling risk factor in accidents. And I think those are the sort of messages we need to get out to this at-risk population, particularly the younger population that we know through survey data is, most likely to admit having used a controlled substance like marijuana and then driving. They're most likely to be mixing controlled substances like marijuana and alcohol and then driving. And we simply know that they tend to be some of the most inexperienced and naive drivers simply because of their age, and they're more likely to take unnecessary risks. That's the sort of population I would like to see an evidence-based campaign targeted toward, really making them aware of some of the risks regarding drug driving. And I think we can do that. I think we can do it without passing draconian legislation, and I do think technology can play a role in this. I do think that law enforcement can be better educated as to the signs to look for drivers that may be under the influence of drugs. And I think other countries have shown us evidence that you can educate officers and that you can even teach officers how to administer certain clinical tests on drivers to better determine whether they may be under the influence of drugs. And when they are, we at NORML do not have a problem with the law stepping in and punishing that behavior, because it is not an example of responsible use of marijuana.
Also today, Paul, we're in our re-legalize campaign. You have been at NORML for some time. These fundraisers at NORML really have a big positive impact on the foundation.
Oh, sure, they certainly can. I think sometimes, it's a double-edged sword, because NORML's been around for some time and has terrific name recognition among the general population. I think sometimes there are assumptions that NORML is a much bigger and much better funded organization than it actually is. And I think many people would be surprised to know that NORML does many of the activities it does do with a very small staff and a relatively small budget. And people do need to know that. They need to know that, in fact, without a membership base, without donors giving to the organization can't exist. It can't do the work that it does. So if people out there have appreciated the work that NORML's done through the years and wants to see NORML continue this work and do it better than we do now, now's really an opportunity for people to make that happen simply by giving a little bit to this organization.
NORML has always been a grassroots effort and reliant on public support. And among other reform groups, that's pretty unique.
Sure, arguably NORML of the drug law reform groups is probably the most membership-driven organization. The overwhelming majority of NORML's budget does not come from grants or large donations. It comes from very small donations from the actual membership, and it comes from a very large number of donations, but very small donations, which makes NORML much more accountable to its members than other organizations, and it really does make NORML at its core to be a grassroots organization. And that's something we're very proud of. And, like I said, this is a perfect opportunity, particularly for people who have never been involved with the organization, to get involved simply by contributing, a very small amount of money. Is a minimal donation of $5 is one of the things we're asking for as part of this fundraising drive. And certainly, our hope is that thousands of individuals will respond to that request and really help the organization continue its work in 2008.
Righto, and folks can go right on up to normal.org/relegalize or right to the normal.org homepage or normalaudio-stash.com. Get involved right now by making your donation. Paul, you have authored many of the NORML white papers and publications. This information does take an investment to produce and print, but these print resources, they do have an important impact out there.
Sure, and not just writing and publishing the information, but then, getting that information out there in the public domain, holding press conferences, working with the media, printing booklets, and then shipping those booklets to thousands of people. We published a booklet last year, The Emerging Clinical Applications for Cannabis. We shipped well over 3,000 copies to legislators in different states that were debating this issue. We did that at no cost to the activists on the ground in those states, and it was all at cost to NORML, but it was a cost that we felt was well worth it because that booklet was very well received by politicians and made a great deal of difference in educating many of these legislators, some of which did successfully pass medical marijuana legislation last year, and some of which will be revisiting the issue again this year, and that education process is going to be very valuable in getting these proposals and these bills passed through these legislatures.
Righto. Well, Paul, many thanks for joining us here today to cover the Drug Policy Alliance Conference, DUID, and our Re-Legalize fundraiser today. Looking forward to doing our end-of-year wrap-ups with the top marijuana stories of 2007 here in the next couple weeks.
I do too, Chris, and many thanks for you for being an integral part of this organization and also, a large part of this fundraising week.
Many thanks again, Paul. Paul Armentano is NORML's Senior Policy Analyst. You can read the Emerging Clinical Applications for Cannabis and Cannabinoids booklet online. We have links to it right up on our website today at NORMLAudioStash.com. Help NORML legalize marijuana in America right now with our Re-Legalize campaign. Head right on up to NORML.org/relegalize or NORMLAudioStash.com. Make your donation right now. Make a positive change for all of America. Re-legalize today with NORML. And remember, folks, for all of you counting those tax-deductible donations, this is a donation to the 501c3 of the NORML Foundation, and it is tax-deductible. So give yourself a tax break. Help legalize marijuana and give yourself a big green, warm, and fuzzy feeling right now. Just head on up to NORML.org, NORML.org/relegalize or NORMLAudioStash.com, and get yourself involved right now. Stay tuned. We've got some music from Austin coming up next.
Pester your parents. Bother your brother. Cajole your coworkers. Understand your uncle. Nudge your nana. Corner your cousins. Beg your brethren. Dog your dad. Agitate your aunt. Sass your sister. And go look under the seat cushions of your grandfather's favorite chair. NORML and you can't alone change 70 years of misguided marijuana laws, so we need the help of everyone around each of us who has a stake in ending marijuana prohibition to get educated, organized, and politically active. Hello, this is NORML's Executive Director, Alan St. Pierre, and one need not become a Johnny or Jane OneNote about recruiting our fellow citizens and family members to organize around cannabis law reform. But don't let your friends and family off the hook either by allowing them to simply hope others are going to do all the heavy lifting when it comes to ending marijuana prohibition and replacing it with alternative and sensible policies. After 37 years in Washington, D.C., NORML is like a public utility, trusted, always there, and commissioned to serve the public need. Please make a tax-deductible donation to the NORML Foundation today so we don't have to be around tomorrow. Donate now to the NORML Foundation and receive a range of cool NORML-centric thank you premiums by calling toll-free 888-67-NORML, NORML, or by visiting norml.org/join. Thank you in advance for both caring and sharing.
One way or another, getting it up with our Germany brothers. It's the same shit going on all over the world. Legalize it, don't suppress the herd. Relegalize, relegalize, relegalize. Go and take your chances. Like it, as good guys.
You're listening to NORML's Daily Audio Stash.
Oh, folks, we have gone out to some spectacular events here on the Audio Stash in the last 18 months. We've had audio direct from the Seattle Hemp Fest. We've had audio from Hempstock, from the Oregon Medical Cannabis Awards, from concerts in California, a benefit concert in Nashville, from the NORML conferences, from the legal seminars, from the Students for Sensible Drug Policy Conference, from Drug Policy Alliance. One of the coolest things we covered here on the Audio Stash was definitely the Austin Freedom Fest, a benefit concert for NORML, the Marijuana Policy Project, and the Women's Alliance for Medical Marijuana. The concert took place in August in the heat of Austin, Texas, and it was headlined by Willie Nelson, of course. Featured Ray Benson and Asleep at the Wheel. Paula Nelson, Amy Nelson, those are Willie's daughters. They have their own bands out there, and we featured them both here on the Audio Stash over time as well. There was a lot of great music down at the Austin Freedom Fest, and a lot of great folks were gathered down there as well. That was a benefit for NORML and the other groups involved. That's what fundraising is all about, folks. This is what grassroots advocacy is about. Concerts are a great way to sort of see that out there. But your involvement right now during our Relegalize campaign today, and again, you can link up to all of that through our website at normalaudiostash.com or right up on the homepage at normal.org. Your involvement here during our Relegalize campaign, well, it helps us put up events like the Austin Freedom Fest more often in the future. But the biggest impact of your support during our Relegalize campaign, well, it's to make marijuana legal in America, a taxed and regulated substance for all responsible adults to enjoy right here in the United States. So get involved with our Relegalize campaign today. You can do it while you're listening to this fine music we recorded at the Austin Freedom Fest. Here is Carolyn Wonderland, a great friend of the NORML Foundation. She's played a number of events. She has a song called Annie's Scarlet Letter, really written specifically about this right before she played at the Seattle Hempfest a couple of years ago. Here's Carolyn Wonderland. We have links to her right up on our website today at normalaudiostash.com. This is live in Austin.
If you don't mind, I want to do a nasty song for you here. You know, in recent days, we've lost yet another beautiful musician from the Austin area, a man named Uncle John Turner. When I lived in Houston, he was my neighbor and subsequently one of my first drummers, the man who taught me everything. For example, if you can't walk it, they can't dance it. This is a very important thing for drummers everywhere to know. That being said, this is a song that I learned when he was in my band as a kid, and I'd like to send it out to him upstairs because he's always still alive and well right here with me.
The sun is shining down. You so good, your long brown hair made me feel way down low. You should make the whole earth quake with every matter window. Still alive and well. Still alive and well. Every now and then I know it's kind of hard to tell, but I'm still alive and well. Still alive and well. Still alive and well.
Thank you. For you on.
Between me and that high ground, that high ground, that high ground, yes. If I've been standing still for hours, when it feels like standing days. And I've been standing still for hours, oh, don't feel like standing on time. I see the town stands still and breathes as long as you ain't got a word to say, honey, when you pray. Judgment Day, on Judgment Day, on Judgment Day, baby.
Thank y'all so much. They call us Carolyn Wonderland. God bless you and thank you for coming out to the important ones. Thank you.
That was Carolyn Wonderland, one of the rockinest singers of our modern time and really a great friend of the NORML Foundation. She is just a wonderful person, and she has lent her support and her music to events for the NORML Foundation and other groups seeking marijuana law reform. Carolyn is just great. You can link up to her website right up on our own today at normalaudiostash.com and get involved. All the folks at the Austin Freedom Fest, Ray Benson asleep at the wheel, Carolyn Wonderland, Willie Nelson, they all did this to benefit NORML. They all did it to make some money for the NORML Foundation. So why don't you take that step too? If Willie Nelson can do it, if Carolyn Wonderland can do it, well, you can log on right now and make a $5 donation, as little as $5. It really does. Imagine, that's like 5 songs on iTunes. We give you 5 podcasts a week here on NORML's Daily Audio Stash every week for free. So make a simple $5 donation right now. Make it more if you can. And follow in the footsteps of Carolyn Wonderland, Ray Benson, Willie Nelson, and all of the supporters of NORML out there. Make sure you help us re-legalize right now at norml.org/re-legalize or normalaudiostash.com. Let's get to some Ray Benson and a little bit of Willie Nelson himself from the Austin Freedom Fest. That's coming up right now.
Thank y'all for coming down to Freedom Fest. Do as we say no to most drugs. Hello, Texas! 1, 2, 3. I was born in Louisiana, down on the old bayou. Raised on shrimps and catfish, Mammy's good gumbo. I got the rambling fever, said bye to Ma and Pa. Cross that old Red River, this is what I saw. I saw miles and miles of Texas, all the stars up in the sky. I saw miles and miles of Texas, gonna live here till I die. Here we go. I rode up into Austin, the cradle of the West. Just ask any Longhorn, he'll tell you it's the best. I met a Texas beauty, I got friendly with her pa. I looked in her big blue eyes, this is what I saw. I saw miles and miles of Texas, all the stars up in the sky. I saw miles and miles of Texas, gonna live here till I die. In the shadows there on the steel guitar, Eddie. I started taming broncos on every rodeo until I met a tough one. His name was Devil Joe. I grabbed hold of his bridle just to ride this old outlaw. He threw me from the saddle, boy. That's what I saw. I saw miles and miles of Texas, all the stars up in the sky. I saw miles and miles of Texas, gonna live here till I die. Oh, let's hear it one time, everybody. I saw miles and miles of Texas, I'm gonna live here till I die. Yes, yes. Good evening, everybody. How y'all doing? Let's boogie woogie down Route 66.
All right, you met little sister and you met little Jody. This is little Paul back there on the drum. I wrote a song called Me and Paul. I'd like to do it for y'all. Well, it's been rough and rocky traveling, but I'm finally standing upright on the ground. And after taking several readings, I'm surprised to find my mind still fairly sound. I thought Nashville was the roughest, but I know I've said the same about them all. We received our education in the cities of the nation, me and Paul. Almost busted in Laredo, but for reasons that I'd rather not disclose. But if you're staying in a motel there and leave, just don't leave nothing in your clothes. And at the airport in Milwaukee, they refused to let us board the plane at all. They said we looked suspicious, but I believe they like to pick on me and Paul. And on a package show in Buffalo, with us and Kitty Wells and Charlie Pride. The show was long and we was just sitting there, and we'd come to play and not just for the ride. And we drank a lot of whiskey, so I don't know if we went on that night at all. We received our education in the cities of the nation, me and Paul. Well, it's been rough and rocky traveling, but I'm finally standing upright on the ground. And after taking several readings, I'm surprised to find my mind still fairly sound. I thought Branson was the roughest, but I know I've said the same about them all. We received our education in the cities of the nation, me and Paul. Thank y'all, very good.
Hi, this is Willie Nelson from NORML. For 30 years, NORML has provided a voice for the millions of Americans who smoke marijuana responsibly. More than 500,000 Americans are arrested each year for smoking pot. These are ordinary citizens like you and me, whose lives and careers are being needlessly destroyed. To learn how you can help, contact NORML at www.norml.org or call toll-free at 888-67-NORML.
That's what Willie Nelson and Ray Benson and Carolyn Wonderland are doing. They are out there holding benefit concerts to raise money for NORML. Well, you can help out too right now during our Relegalize campaign. Show us that you are right in step, in tune with Willie, as it were. Help us out right now. The NORML Foundation has enjoyed, well, long interest from Willie Nelson because he wants to see marijuana legalized here in the United States as well. So fall into step, fall into tune with Willie right now today. Join the Relegalize campaign right up at NORML.org, NORMLAudiostash.com, or NORML.org/relegalize. Don't just do it yourself. Make that donation today and then tell your friends and family to make that donation as well. Legal marijuana in the United States in a taxed and regulated market so that all American responsible adults can enjoy marijuana. It won't happen until you make that step, until we all show our support. We're going to have great shows for you here all week long. Dr. Mitch Earlywine joins us here tomorrow with our Cannabis Science segment. More great music on Friday. We're going to have a very special show on Friday. Let's relegalize right now. Join us right now. Make your donations right now. Visit NORMLAudiostash.com or NORML.org. Get involved.
Listening to NORML's Daily Audio Stash, the growing truth about cannabis. Make sure you visit our website at normalaudiostash.com. That's NORMLAudiostash.com for more information about every day's show. I'm your host, Chris Goldstein. Thanks for listening today. See you at 4:20 tomorrow. The podcasting technology of NORML is made possible by Red Aphid Interactive Media. More information at redapphid.com.